Welcome to the IED's panel on hydrogen, which took place at the Cinema Palace in Brussels. It followed the premiere screening of Hydrogen Reconnecting Europe, a film produced by the IED and directed by Florian Kaspar-Richter. The panel, hosted by the film's director, featured a number of experts discussing the future of this new form of energy production in the European Union. Could hydrogen become something like CETA 2.0, reinforcing the Union and setting it to a new course? The members of the panel were Geert de Kock, a strategist for electromobility, Yorgos Chatzimarkakis, General Secretary of Hydrogen Europe, Victoria Petrova, an advisor to the European Commission, and Christoph Grudler, MEP for the city of Belfort and member of the Committee on Industry and Energy. The panel discussed the question: is hydrogen heading the right direction?
Hydrogen is definitely part of the solution, an important part, indispensable part, but not the only part.
Can I just, you said it's an energy carrier. It's not. It's a vector. Electricity is a carrier. You can carry electricity. You cannot dispatch it. You cannot store. Hydrogen can do that. And no, you can't. You need a battery for that. And that's the difference. It's the dispatchability, and we will discuss about that, because that marks the big change. So we need to overcome narratives. I love what Christoph Grudler said, that basically coal and steel were the basis of the European Union in the 50s, and now hydrogen can bring us back together again. But we need to be relaxed, and we need to be open-minded and not have a closed narrative. But then we have the chance to do it.
Do you think, I'm actually going to ask this later on, but you already sense there are some, adamant fronts here often. Do you see a specific reason why there is such a frontier mentality between those two parts of the future, energy future?
No, I mean, we really see that hydrogen will be an important role. There will be huge demand coming forward. And so, but we also see hydrogen as, like, hydrogen doesn't make any sense unless it really helps decarbonization. So we really believe in renewable hydrogen as a basis where you really deliver the zero emission energy to different uses, be it transport, be it other sectors, industry. So if it's zero emission, it can play an indispensable role. But that renewable hydrogen, that will take time to build up. And so we really need a targeted effort at certain sectors where we don't see any alternative solutions yet. And so this is where we really see a big role for hydrogen, where we target it at first at key sectors where we don't see an alternative. And like battery electric ships, we don't see that coming anytime soon, definitely for long distance. So we really see aviation and shipping as key lead markets for hydrogen, where we don't see another solution. And so this is where we need to focus in the next 10 years.
Christoph, what do you think about what the EU is actually doing at the moment to further this change and also produce, go into the green hydrogen production, which is the most important part of producing hydrogen for you as well?
Yeah, it's very important at the technical level, at the political level. As you know, the Green Deal goal, it's very important. It's in 2050. And for this, to meet this goal, we need to have a mix, an energetic mix with the part of hydrogen inside, of course, in different energy, but hydrogen has a key role to play in this, to meet this goal. And the question is that, did we want to meet this goal or not? If we want to, we need a massive hydrogen production in order to have growth, in order to have skilled new jobs. It's very important. And another part which is important for me is the strategic autonomy of Europe. If we produce more in Europe, hydrogen, we are not depending so much of the other continents. And the problem with energy since the beginning of Europe is that we import oil or gas coming from other continents, and it's not good for our strategic autonomy. That means to have our own destiny in our hands. And for this, hydrogen is a marvelous energy vector, we can say.
Okay. Do you think, Yorgo, I don't know if Victoria is there, I can't see her, she is there. I hope you can hear us and can see us, and I hope we can hear you. Could you say something? That would be great, so I know that you actually can respond.
I'm not just a pretty face and on the other side of the camera. Yes.
Ah, there you are. Hello, Victoria. Do you think, I
Hello.
mean, you're an advisor to the European Commission, and do you think that we're actually on a good way when it comes to setting these new regulations and regulatory measures to actually further the hydrogen agenda within Europe?
I would say we do more than just do regulation. We do put efforts to leverage the commitment towards greening of our industry, and hydrogen was clearly identified. It was identified also in the speeches of President von der Leyen. It was identified also in the declaration that we have, our political declaration, in the form of the hydrogen strategy. It is one of the very important tools that we have in decarbonizing our industry. And indeed, we have heard Mr. De Kock speaking and referring more to transport solutions, but much more importantly than just the transport part, hydrogen is a solution for many types of uses within the European economy. And therefore, besides the political documents and communication that I have mentioned, the Green Deal and the hydrogen strategy, I would like really to insist on the concrete leveraging that we are activating now. You know that since June last year, 2020, we have a Clean Hydrogen Alliance that has been set up and is rolled out now. Last May, by 7th of May, we have asked the members of the Alliance to submit projects. So just the number of companies that wanted to register as members of the Alliance, we are now with 1,460 companies. So we are speaking of a magnitude that is 100 times higher than for the Battery Alliance. And the number of projects that have been submitted by beginning of May ahead of the Spring Hydrogen Forum we had on 17th and 18th of June, we have almost 1,000 projects that are registered, over 1,050 that have been submitted. So we have a huge potential that we identified by this project collection. And I have a very positive information that the declaration of capacity of 40 gigawatts to be set up, if all the projects are fulfilled, of those projects that are submitted, have been submitted for the Clean Hydrogen Alliance project pipeline collection, we are exceeding by far these 40 gigawatts. So this is extremely positive. And what is also very positive, we have a time horizon for those projects to be kickstarted in the very short future in industry. You know, for heavy industry, return on investments is about 20 to 50 years, depending on the investments. Here we have a kickstarting dates declared between 2021 till 2023, 2024. It's about 2/3 of the projects, both on production and consumptions, that have been presented with the kickstart date in the next 3 to 3.5 years. That is tremendous information and tremendous positive perspective that we see behind that.
So, I mean, that goes directly to one of the questions that actually one of our audience members posted to us, and I'm going to forward it to Christoph and to Jorge as well, is the question is the current roadmap in Europe ambitious enough? So basically, would you agree with Victoria there?
Yeah, I think it's ambition enough, but as we can do more, the best is to more. It's a big success, the call. A lot of industry all around Europe have a lot of very good projects. In France, especially, we have money. We put at the national level, we put 2 billion for 2 years, and it's all consummated. There is too much projects, and we need to put more money. It's what the French government will do. Will put more money because it's so a success. And what's important for me is that the European industry is ready for it. It's not like a photovoltaic panel, for example, when we give money directly to the pocket of the China, of South Korea, because our industry was not ready with products. Now it's different. We have a lot of innovation in our industry, even with Horizon Europe. And with this innovation, now we can arrive to the network. And with the network, we'll have, of course, product coming from Asia and Korea, but also products coming from our European industry. And it's very good for jobs, it's very good for the Green Deal and for our strategic autonomy.
Would you agree, Jorgo, that there is enough money in this game at the moment, or is there more need for it? Is money the problem, or is there other issues that actually need to be solved first?
Money is not the problem at the moment. It's rather the problem of implementation to attract also private investments. I mean, you need to see it also in the historical perspective. More than a year ago, pandemic broke out, and the European Green Deal was somehow in danger. EVP Timmermans had the idea to ask for something new, to go for something new. And then we presented this 40 gigawatt approach. And Victoria just said that the target was enshrined also in the EU strategy supported by the European Parliament, 40 gigawatt until 2030. And within a year, we understood that the projects that have been collected will overshoot by far the 40 gigawatts. That's exactly what Christophe just alluded to. The industry is ready. We can see all over Europe. As of yesterday, we know which countries contribute to the IPCI, the important project of common European interest. They are all there. Poland, so countries where you would say, oh, they are reluctant. They are all there. Countries from Middle, Central and Eastern Europe, small countries like Luxembourg, which were reluctant so far, big countries like Germany with more than 8.2 billion invested into these projects. I think what we can see is the public funding is there. You can see that in the recovery plans of the member states, hydrogen has become quite prominent. In some countries, it's even the most prominent issue that has been attacked by others. I can understand that. But the point here is the readiness. Can we implement fast? Can we do it affordably in order to achieve decarbonization? And I agree with Victoria. It goes much beyond the transport sector, way beyond. And the transport sector it's not a byproduct, but it will be a very important other sector in parallel to industry. I think the industry is the low-hanging fruit. You have a chemical industry, a steel industry that can implement nearly immediately, chemical immediately, petrochemical tomorrow. Steel needs some 3 or 4 years of adaptation, but then they are there. And of course, also heating. I'm very cautious of those people who say, okay, we now say hydrogen can go into industry, but not into transport. If, then only into aviation, not into trucks, and not into heating. Who's saying that? If cost efficiency and system efficiency is there, we should let the market decide. The market needs to decide all that and the acceptability of this. But to be clear on your question, we are endowed with enough money to kickstart it. We now need to attract private investment by setting up these projects. Private investment will only come if they see it starts. And in many, many cases, it's getting started right now, so we are in plan.
That's the reason why we have to help the market with the IPCEI. And well, now we are waiting for the beginning of the IPCEI, and some member states are not ready to notify their hydrogen project to Brussels, to the Commission. And the most important is now to start. I hope it will be done during this summer, maybe in September, because we are waiting.
Everywhere we went, we kind of met this idea of that we have lost the electromobility race and to like Asia, and this is a race, hydrogen, that we can win. You know, you saw the guy from Petronor just say that again. You have the same. Do you feel in the same way? Do you think it's like a European project to win this race in this case? Do you think that it's actually a race? How you see it?
Well, first of all, I don't think we've lost the electromobility race by any standard. You know, European car manufacturers are really going for battery electric vehicles, and the limit there, like rolling out battery electric vehicle sales are rapidly increasing. Efficient market share of European car manufacturers. The idea that there is a battery alliance, there's lots of battery manufacturing that will take place across Europe. So there is, in a way, the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance tries to replicate the success of this European battery alliance. So the point that we would have lost the battery electric race or the electromobility race is not correct, I think. I think what we need, and I'm also encouraged to see the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance and these 1,000+ projects. I think I'm really encouraged by that. I think we have public money going to it. Private investors are seemingly ready to invest. And what we really need now is regulation to drive that demand. And I think the hydrogen strategy has the right targets, the right level of ambition. What we really need now is regulations to drive these lead markets. And again, for shipping, and I speak about what I know best, the transport sector. For shipping, it really is the difference between the cheapest, dirtiest oil, the heavy fuel oil that we use in ships, and the cost of green ammonia, green hydrogen is so enormous that no carbon price will ever close that gap. So you need regulations to drive that demand. The same in aviation, where that e-kerosene is almost 10 times more expensive than the fossil kerosene. So you will need regulations as well to drive those lead markets. And I think all the public money is welcome, but I think private investors will really jump on this if they have the confidence that there is a long-term push and a long-term vision, political vision behind it.
Victoria, basically Transport and Environment and Hydrogen Europe have sent a joint letter to the Commission where we ask for exactly that segment of the market. So we are collaborating there very closely, and I'm very happy to see that, and we will continue that in aviation, I'm absolutely sure. And we will discuss about trucks later on. And passenger cars, I can understand you, but about trucks we will discuss. We will start a discussion later on, but I'm very happy that we cooperate there.
Victoria, we've heard it now from the panel here as well, but also in the film, that everybody kind of is at the demand of regulatory measures. Can you tell us, what you think is needed immediately and where we're heading with the Commission in that area?
Well, I'm very biased on what is needed because we are already acting on that. And maybe to start with, we have made a major political declaration and followed by actions with the declaration of President von der Leyen with the Green Deal announced on 11th of December 2019. And it's not a declaration, but it's also an action, because we are mobilizing practically 1 trillion of euros for investments in the course of the forthcoming 10 years. What I would like also to state, we issued in beginning of April the renewed version of the industrial strategy. And why this is important is exactly what we have heard previously in the debate of whether Europe can be sustainable and can be independent, in particular as, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my references. Mr. Grüttler has very clearly stated the question is that we avoid to replace oil and gas dependence on imports by green hydrogen dependence on imports. That will be not very smart from what we would say, because this industrial strategy has clearly stated in the context of pandemic and context of that we have seen very recently, and it was the catalyzer to push us to analyze the further and more in details the value chains, industrial value chains, different strategic value chains. We have identified that the EU is strongly dependent on a very large number of products. If you have if you want some summer reading, please go into it. It's several dozens, almost 100 of pages, but it is very valuable analysis on the different value chains that my colleagues performed, we performed jointly, and to see on which strategic elements, even not just industry, but medicine, we are depending on imports. And this is fundamental to understand, and why now the trend for reshoring the production lines to have a certain security of production in the EU is occurring. The pandemic was a kind of an electroshock for us to come back to that. Now, on the other documents that are currently issued, you understand that we have also issued the taxonomy document that basically aims at mobilizing financing for green projects. That is fundamental. This has been issued very recently, and we are preparing for issuing the so-called Fit for 55. Maybe the title might change, but Fit for 55 package, including new targets and new constraints and pricing on the emission trading scheme, are in a very immediate pipeline for output. So on this, we are very serious, and we clearly work on the support and stimulus towards the economic actors. However, now, if I may, I would slightly disagree with Mr. Hatzimarkakis, because Jorge, you are right that we have a very serious amount of money that is dedicated and mobilized, including through the recovery and resilience plans that are currently going through approval. We have seen a number of member states that are very ambitious in mobilizing this immediately available funding for hydrogen and green growth, though I would say we are still lacking the private sector mobilization. So I would phrase it differently. We need to see the private sector funding to be coming towards this leveraging that we are operating now. It is fundamental because, you know, the European budget is, if I'm not mistaken, still around 1% of the EU's GDP. So we cannot imagine funding and financing the green transition with a hydrogen transition for the whole EU with just a fraction of this 1%. So therefore, the mobilization of financing is detrimental to the success of these projects that have been submitted and to the transformation. And the question is not to see things black and white like my jacket, or rather green and blue when we speak of hydrogen. The question is about launching, pushing, kick-starting these projects to enable the transition toward greening, in particular for industrial sectors where direct electrification is not feasible with regard to the huge demand that this will require. And we see there the hydrogen as a total catalyzer and opportunity to decarbonize this heavy industry by pushing up the number of renewables for production of hydrogen and using hydrogen both as power generator and storage. So this is really a different way to see the economy evolving. We see a number of projects that would be rather autonomous. I would say autonomous in the sense that you will have the renewables energy production, then you would be able to back on that the production of green hydrogen, and then you will be able to transport and provide this green hydrogen as a power generator for different uses. in our economy, and not just to be dependent on the existing grid, on the existing electrons circulating in the grids. It is about a totally new transformation, a very ambitious one, and there again, regulation is to support, to stimulate, but we need to mobilize private funding and financing, and we are doing that through the recovery and resilience plans that help to kickstart projects, through the alliance projects, and also through the IPCI that was mentioned by Jorgo, and it is very important that you will see in the coming weeks and months, the member states have focused on a certain types of projects that they intend now to push for the two first IPCI. So we will have them a number on hydrogen. And maybe last comment, if I may, also on what Mr. De Kock said. Yes, on electromobility, we are trying not to lose the race, and that is also greatly due to the visionary approach and the voluntary approach that was delivered with my immediate colleagues in the directorate where I'm working, who are working on mobility, and with the launch of the Battery Alliance. And there again, with the support that came also from the EIB, but also from the voluntarist approach on EU level, we managed to help the electromobility in Europe to try to recover its challenging but much more comfortable position. And indeed, for the time being, due to the long-term investment in the FP67 with the Horizon 2020 that is now going to conclusions with the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking that will be transformed into the Clean Hydrogen Partnership with Horizon Europe. We have funded massively and very importantly hydrogen-related research, and which basically helps and helped the readiness of industry to roll out industrial projects now. So without all this long-term and massive investment that has occurred in the past 1 and 2 decades, we wouldn't have been in the position to see such a tremendous quantity of hydrogen-related projects to be declared and to be ready to roll out. So this is fundamental. The EU is consistent. The Commission is working on a very pragmatic approach, regulatory and leveraging funding, but indeed more funding will be more than welcome to enable all those projects to become true.
I want to open up to the panel again with something you said about importing hydrogen, and maybe you wanted to add to her as well, but let me just ask this question first because we got it from the audience as well. The audience question from Louise was, should we produce hydrogen more locally or try to import it from abroad? And I think that was something that Victoria spoke to about. How do you feel about hydrogen imports, and what does the EU stand on, and what should it actually work on in this regard?
I think we need both of them. But as more as we can have local production with maybe smart grids, small plants in some area far away in Europe, it will be better because we don't need enormous networks with enormous investment. Because you know, of course, pipelines are very important to transport hydrogen, but in a normal pipeline for gas, now it's not good for hydrogen. You can just put maybe 30% of hydrogen into a natural gas pipeline. Then we need a lot of investment, and we depend on the others. If it comes from Africa maybe, or the Atlantic Sea, there is more dependence. That's the reason why I prefer to try to have local production for local consumption. It's maybe the best way first. But as we need a lot of production, we need in the other side also more gazoduc, more pipelines. Sorry, but I want to say about what Victoria said before. Private companies have a key role to play in this battle for clean hydrogen, and we have different tools. She talks about taxonomy. It's very important to have hydrogen, decarbonized hydrogen, I can say, into the taxonomy, because it's private funds who can arrive to help the industry to invest. And the second tool is certification. It's very important to have a certification of origin. If you use hydrogen, it will be important to know that it's zero carbon emission hydrogen. It's not gray hydrogen as we use today in Europe. And the last idea is the carbon pricing, of course, especially with the mechanism at the border of the European Union, when you can tax produce coming from other parts of the world. And with all those tools, we can have a good mechanism in order to regulate and to have more fundings in the hydrogen industry.
Well, Georg, the same question goes to you when it comes to regulatory measures as well as with the import of hydrogen. There's a connection there. What do you say about that import? You know, Germany just announced that it's going to import a lot of hydrogen, actually. So how you stand on that ground?
Maybe I start with the regulatory question.
Yes.
I can only praise the Commission for setting up these projects, the Alliance, which has 100 times, as Victoria said, as many members as the Battery Alliance. So that shows that it's a broad value chain. It's not just downstream, it's upstream, midstream, downstream. Second, the member states picked this up. It's a very good cooperation between the Commission and the member states. So we only can praise the Commission and the member states. However, and Christophe put it very right at the beginning, the industry was already at a quite high level of maturity of projects. There have been investments already. So we should not mix this up. Victoria, I can understand that you're waiting now for industrial investments. My association has nearly 300 industrial members from all over Europe. And I can only say they are ready to invest, but they wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow is a historical day. So we lived our historical day 8th of July, Victoria, thanks to the Commission, the hydrogen strategy, but also the Alliance were launched last year. And now we are again in July. Possibly it's even more important for my sector, what happens tomorrow, the so-called Fit for 55 package. Gert knows this very well. In RED II, there's one sector that says, if you go battery, you get 5 times as much money. If you go hydrogen, you need to prove every 15 minutes that it's additional. So these are things no investor looks at this and says, oh, the Europeans are inviting me to invest. No. So I'm waiting for tomorrow. I'm very confident that all these elements are not anymore in, or at least that there is a phasing out. So
we should just, because we have audience members who don't know what's happening tomorrow and what.
Tomorrow.
Explain, please, just for, we're all here on one ground, but just.
It's the famous Fit for 55 package, encompassing not only one regulation, I think it's a dozen of regulations, which make us Europeans fit to reduce by 55% the CO2 emissions. In some countries like Germany, it's even 65% because of a constitutional court ruling. And this sets the bar. We need to be ready, and we are ready. Now on imports. Let me explain. I take Germany because it's a very fascinating example. Last year, Germany had 46% of renewable electricity, 46%. Wow. I don't compare this to France. They have another big energy source. But Germany, renewable 46%, that's wow. The costs for renewable energy that is intermittent to set up the system, set it down, it's 32 billion for 2020, 32 billion, out of which is only 1.5 billion curtailment. Curtailment is you just close the wind, you don't accept it because the grid is full. In this case, hydrogen would be a super buffer. I think you agree. So hydrogen could avoid any curtailment. That's what local production for hydrogen is super good for. It is to help the energy grid, the whole energy grid, power and gas, to be flexible and to play. And we will have dedicated hydrogen pipelines where, in the case, take the energy park Mainz, where this happens, 6 windmills, 6 megawatt for the utility of Mainz. Once the grid is full or the price for electricity is very, very low, immediately in milliseconds, the electrolyzer goes on and you produce hydrogen that you can then put into the gas grid up to 20% without any problem. That happens already today. And here hydrogen can help enormously. But if you want to produce methanol or even ammonia, and ammonia is the preferred option for maritime, why should we produce this here? If you, in Europe, if you put a solar panel into Brussels, you get some kilowatt hours of electricity. If you put the same panel into Morocco, or even southern Spain, it's 2.5, nearly 3 times as much. It does not make sense to take away the precious electricity from the battery cars, small cars for cities, and to leave it there. I agree with you. That's where we should be very cautious. But when it comes to hydrogen that we need in steel industry, in chemical, but also for trucks, for some trains, for planes, we should produce it where it's much cheaper to produce. Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Namibia, Mauritania, Chile, Australia. Hydrogen will become a new commodity. I understand that many people, and I see Victoria is very, very, very nervous about that. Victoria is from, I think I can say it, from Bulgaria, and I can fully understand that 4 member states last week have said no imports. One of that was France because of the nuclear dimension, but all the others were Central and Eastern European countries. They have their history, they have their conviction. I fully understand that. However, we need to see the global thing. And the global thing is we will set up even steel plants in Mauritania. We are currently discussing about that. We will set up real development, not development aid, real development, because it's cheaper to produce it there. But hydrogen can only do the decarbonization job if it's globally produced at the cheapest regions. And that's what we need to do. We need to work with the Port of Antwerp, the Port of Rotterdam, Hamburg one day, but the 2 ports have a strong import strategy, and that's what we need to support. And we need to be ready for this cheap hydrogen. By the way, Victoria, private investments in Morocco by European companies and in Saudi Arabia, not only by European, go up to very, very high dimensions already. We can count 6 billion private investment in these countries right now without EU helping it. So you see, it all happens already. So to close our eyes does not make sense, and in the council we see already a big majority for that.
So I see Victoria really wants to answer to this. Victoria, how much, and Gerd also wants to answer, so I'm trying to split here. but how much energy independence is needed? I mean, asking both of you.
Maybe Gerd could answer, so
Yes.
I just check one information before I answer, all right?
Okay, go ahead, Gerd.
Well, and I think in the cost of green hydrogen, electricity, like the electricity generation cost is more than 60% of the overall cost of the hydrogen production. So if you can produce the renewables cheaply, then of course it will be better reflected also in the price of in the final price of the hydrogen. So yeah, to not produce in the best renewable locations would not make sense, and it will only increase the price of the hydrogen, which makes it then less competitive compared to the fossil fuel. So I don't think this helps. So I think the role of the European industry is really about the technology, about the fuel cell development, improving the stacks, everything that comes with the hydrogen value chain, like really developing the technology, and then maybe the production. Definitely there will be projects like Ørsted off the coast of Denmark. They produce these hydrogen islands where they will produce hydrogen for the local market. So this will be happening in Europe definitely before 2030. So this is definitely important. From an environmental perspective, what we want to make sure is that we will put in place some very stringent requirements on what are the sustainability requirements for hydrogen. How do we know hydrogen is really green? How do we know hydrogen really delivers emission reductions?
Certification.
The certification issue. So I want to make sure that we have, again, it will be a global market, that we have not some standards in Europe and then some like non-monitored, non-standards, no certification for imports. So we want to make sure that there is really a global approach, and that the European Union is again the standard setter for the global industry. So I think this is again something where, but for this we need strong requirements, and I don't think the rules on these renewable fuels of non-biological origin will not be part of the package tomorrow. But this is again very important that we really do this in the right way. And then a last point I'd like to make is again on yeah, I think in a global trade, again, ports will be central. So I think ports are really non-regret options. Lots of refineries, lots of steel production in ports. You know, shipping will be a major lead market for hydrogen consumption. So I think ports is where you want to have these projects. You know, it enables production, you know, offshore wind with electrolyzers, but also imports via ships. So I think ports are really where you have the no-regret location for hydrogen production, so and imports.
I have to go to Victoria first because I promised, but then afterwards you're straight ahead. Victoria, are you able to, did you check up what you wanted to check?
Yeah, I did check up my information. So there are two elements. One is about international trade of hydrogen as commodity, and in particular, the focus on green hydrogen. That is one element that I will touch upon. And the other is about the potential of hydrogen production in the EU. So the Commission is far from being blind. We are part of the international project on hydrogen energy that exists already for almost 30 years. And we work on issues that are related to tariffs and other taxes, barriers, and constraints that may be on the way of hydrogen trade. We have discussions indeed on the impact of the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, on this. And again, there is very rightly mentioned before that the issue of certification. How could we differentiate between any type of hydrogen and green hydrogen? Because in the current rules of international trade of hydrogen, it is either hydrogen or not a hydrogen. So there is no differentiation on the types of production behind it. So this is a huge international project on how we can differentiate on those types of hydrogen production or hydrogen carriers. So this is one element that I want to bring to your consideration. So there was a meeting of IPHE, the International Project for Hydrogen Energy, end of May. So the work is ongoing on this field. Now, in parallel, I would like to, well, just to give you a hint how these meetings are happening, we have to find the time slot where we could have colleagues from Chile and colleagues from Australia or Japan to be able to meet, and we are in the middle of the time zone, so you can imagine that this is a rather stretching exercise, and I have to praise really our Australian colleagues that are sometimes connecting even at midnight to be able to participate in the discussions. But this brings me to the second part of it. It is, let's say it's a personal reflection, but it's a reflection that we might need to have. And it's a reflection that we're having also in the Commission on the issue of strategic independence and autonomy. So if on one hand we have consumers that do not want to buy even organic apples that are delivered from Chile because it's very far away, and despite those being organic, they consider it's societally maybe difficult to accept that we would like to have these imports that's experienced such a long way. The question is, how is it societally acceptable to have not one apple, not 1 kilo of apple, but thousands of tons of green hydrogen to be shipped from antipodes? So this is a very fundamental issue, and therefore we consider that it is important to have a certain security of supply. It is important, and we can foresee and envisage cooperation with a close neighborhood sorry for that. But the question is, and this is also an economic element building on what Yorgo mentioned about Mauritania, and we have also projects that we have been mentioned, identified in also from Ukraine or from the Balkan countries like Bosnia in our pipeline. But the question is that many of the Central and Eastern European countries that face now the closing of coal mines, lignite mines that have employed a large number of their population, they see hydrogen as a potential vector and an enabler of transition and transformation of these regions. And this we could consider as a very important element in this just transition towards the greening of the European industry by enabling, by leveraging these kind of projects also within the EU. I agree with the efficiency of the solar panel, but there's not only solar panels there. We have hydraulic energies. We have also wind energy. We have also marine energy in the different countries. So the potential of hydrogen production in in Central and Eastern Europe is very, very important. It is almost equal to the potential of production of green hydrogen on Iberic Peninsula if you put Spain and Portugal together. So this is something we have also to consider at our political level, that we do not discard and we do not prevent the just transition and the green transitions in the all across the EU within the borders of the European Union. So this is also something we have to clearly assess, identify, and see how this could be operated. So we have the work on the international trade, but we have also a very fundamental work that we have to perform, and we do perform, on the just transition and on the green transition and inclusiveness within the European Union.
It's too bad, Victoria, that you're not in the room, because Yorgo reacted to you just the same way as you did to him. But I'll give to him in a couple of seconds, because Christoph, you wanted to add something to the importance.
I just want to add a small remark about what Giorgio said about to produce hydrogen, the cheapest it is in the world. It is what we have done with the pharmaceutical products in Europe. We say, oh, the cheapest to produce is in China and in South Korea. Then we have no more pharmaceutical production in Europe. It's easier to produce here at the other part of the world. And after, you have a crisis like the COVID-19 crisis, which arrives, all the borders are closed, and we are totally dependent in Europe, because we haven't seen our strategic autonomy before. And it's very dangerous if we want to produce most of our hydrogen around Europe. We must produce the most as we can locally in different parts of Europe, of course, not only in one part. And after, if we need to import, then import, because it will be a success for hydrogen. But importation, it means cost of transportation and also cost of new pipelines, which are very expensive. And I think the money we have is more useful today in the production of new industrial process, and maybe to have a better network in Europe, especially in Germany, because as Giorgio said, when you have wind turbines working very hardly in Germany, in the Baltic Sea, now you have no network to put it in all around Europe. And it can be a solution to have a good network, to have hydrogen production, to store it, and to push it back in the grid when we need it.
What I also want to go on, before I come back to you, what I also want to go on asking about what Victoria also said, isn't it also about, for a lack of a better term, an emotional connection to that project? Because, I mean, you come from a family who's been involved in the energy sector for a long time in the region. So, and it's part of your family's tradition that, you know, this is part of the region, and it's part of how we as a region work, and how we as a region, you know, produce energy and how we live. So don't you think it's also it's necessary for this hydrogen economy to become a part of an emotional impact on regions as well?
The best to do policy, to be a politician, is to be a little bit emotional too. Well, we are not a machine. Huh? We need to have our feet in the ground and to look what happens in all the regions, in all the local city. My family, of course, work in energy since a long time, and it's important for me. But that's also the reason why I'm involved in the industry, research, and energy committee in the European Parliament, because it's also the story of my family. And I totally believe in a new industrial policy in Europe. And it's also the reason why I've seen in the 80s all the industrial production be closed with a lot of people were making redundant. It was a pity for me to see it. And now we have new projects, especially in energy, but not only in energy. We have a new project of production and new employment in the industry sector in Europe. And I think it is very important to push it and to be ready for this new kind of industry.
Yeah, that's because when it comes to the question, I'll pose it to you, is by when do you think hydrogen will be democratized enough to become a commodity? I mean, this goes to that question, you know, when it becomes a thing that's in every family and that's a household thing to have a hydrogen connection.
It will come very soon. I know many. I came here with a hydrogen car, so I use it every day, a passenger car. There will be stationary uses in stationary fuel cells, so to heat your house. But I fully agree, it's an emotional thing. We see this already. We will need some 5 years until it's not emotional anymore. It's a commodity, it's something normal. However, when I was in the European Parliament, I've written a book called European Patriotism. I regard myself as a European patriot. I want to be energy autonomous. I want to have a European industrial policy, and Victoria, your commissioner, it's the French commissioner, Thierry Breton, is maybe after many years with other commissioners, the first one to tackle a real industrial policy. I like it, to say this clearly. However, we have to do the maths. We cannot say we want to be autonomous, and that's why we wait another 15 years until hydrogen is there enough. No, we need to do both. I fully agree, Victoria, Christophe, that we need to have an autonomy and we have to have an alert plan. But one thing we need to do is we need to diversify the sources of where we are getting our hydrogen from on a global scale. And we're going to do what we are good in as Europeans. We are exporting, so to say, the manufacturing. We will build the electrolyzers. We will build more and more also the photovoltaic panels here. It will be more difficult with wind turbines. Wind turbines offshore are so huge. They are now produced in Europe because Ørsted is taking mostly European wind turbines because you cannot transport them from India or from China here. And that's the reason why I mentioned Mauritania and steel production, Namibia and steel production. You have offshore wind facilities there. You should produce this huge turbine, generators over there. That's a Europeanness. To look for also a resilience of the African partner, a resilience of your partners. Because I can see, and I need to say this, because China was mentioned already, a very, very aggressive approach of China to conquer, and they did already, to conquer not only Africa, that's done, but more and more. I know Greece very well, so half of Greece, it's in Chinese hands already. We let it go during the financial crisis. And there we need to be extremely cautious and to have an extreme plan. And this we only can do with a global view on hydrogen, not with a local or regional one. It will not work. It has to go hand in hand. And we need to build on countries like France having another approach. I'm not here to say yes to nuclear or no. That's a decision by the member states. I take the position of the Commission staying neutral here. That's your decision. By the way, I'm from Saarland. I can see Cattenom with my eyes nearly every day. So I don't really like it, but it's there. However, if you take this decision, that's fine, but France should not block pipelines for others. Because you mentioned the Iberian Peninsula. Spain has already at the moment plans, southern France and Spain, for 78, 9 gigawatt of electrolyzers, privately, Victoria, privately paid. How to get this hydrogen to the demand side, which is mainly northern Italy, but also Germany. Pipelines are the cheapest way. To transport over 1,000 kilometers, 1 kilo of hydrogen is 1 cent. It's so cheap. And retrofitting the pipelines is 25% of new build. It's doable, and we are doing this. And these are the costs, Victoria, where we ask, of course, the public hand to support this infrastructure, as we have done this all over the years. But once it's done, you will see all these investments flow, and France will become one of the top hydrogen countries, but it should be more relaxed to pipelines. You know exactly what I mean. Cables are a good solution, but not the only one. Thank you.
I think we could talk for hours. I think we have about 5 minutes left, if I see that. So I want to go back to one of the questions that I posed to everyone that we actually were on the road with, and that I find quite interesting, and that you actually mentioned when we were in Belfort, that that coal was the unifying factor for Europe in the 50s. That CETA was one of the founding stones of Europe as we know it today. So Europe has faced a lot of tough times in the last couple of years. There have been challenges, coming from Brexit and different other issues. Do you think that a project like hydrogen, or a project of decarbonization in general, can be such a project that not only has a technological impact, but also has a political, and we talked about it before, an emotional impact on the way Europeans view the European Union?
I think, as the title of your documentary is, of your film is that hydrogen can reconnect Europe. And I really appreciate the construction of your movie, of your film, because you have those young people in the future speaking together, looking what we have done today, looking for us today. It's our responsibility to do it. And I think the energy issues in general are very good for reconnecting people. Of course, as Giorgio say, we have to stop with the member state attitude. we need a European attitude. It's not always so easy, but we try to go in this way. And I think that with it, we have a good future for energy and, of course, for Europe.
Gert, can we be a leader again in that field in Europe as well?
Yeah, I mean, I can see the parallel with the Euratom or the European Community for Coal and Steel. So I would like to maybe go back a couple of decades to the 1930s and maybe the New Deal, because I think the New Deal was not just about one thing. Like the New Deal in the US, it was about investing in public infrastructure, in schools, in highways, and so on. I'm not, as transport and environment, I'm not suggesting we build more highways, obviously. Don't let me be misunderstood. But yeah, we're facing a major crisis, like economic, environmental crisis, obviously. Not just a pandemic, like a health crisis, but also air quality is an issue. So we need to tackle this on many fronts. And so I'm a bit concerned if we sort of focus on hydrogen as reconnecting Europe. I think the European Green Deal, with a renovation wave, investing in building efficiency, a charging network for electric cars, refueling stations for ships. So I think, why not? And like investing in public transport, investing in bike lanes. So like a broader based approach. And I think that sort of New Deal, that is what I see more, and hydrogen will be as I said, hydrogen will be an indispensable part, but it needs to be part of a broader strategy. So that's how I see this sort of political project being developed, and I hope to see that at least the core of that tomorrow on the table when the Commission presents its Fit for 55 package.
Mm-hmm. Your last question to you is: do you think that sometimes it feels like there's a proposal of technological change, as you said, is enough Do you think there's other changes that need to go along with the technological change? Do we have to rethink sustainability in general?
Well, the circularity will become the most important issue of our future economy. So we need to stop linear processes. So you take out raw material, you use it, you throw it away. And the circularity is an extremely important aspect also for the hydrogen economy. So that is why hydrogen is rather an enabler also for other technologies, even for batteries. So it's an enabler for better use of batteries in certain niches. And that is why, yes, there will be definitely a better interoperability with other technologies. We show this also in the Alliance by cooperating with many others. I would like to praise you, Florian, because I share the view of Christoph that this documentary is also quite emotional. It's not only educational and informative, so you learn a lot of things, but it's also emotional. I was very emotional seeing the very last part where the two students share this joint future. This is what it is about, ladies and gentlemen. I think we only can work to change all this, to make this continent, as Mrs. von der Leyen said, net zero, climate neutral, if we work together. So TND and Hydrogen Europe, when we started to know each other, we were enemies. They hated us. We didn't know why, but they hated us. And we tried to overcome this. And today we are not best friends, but we are good partners. We are very good partners. And I think this is important, to work together, to do this together. And I wish all the success to this documentary. I like it very much. And I want many, many people to see this. Hydrogen is not the silver bullet. It's not the only solution, but it's definitely the hero net zero. And we will maybe prove it tomorrow in Fit for 55.
Victoria, are we on the right path? Do you think the European Commission is on the right path right now? Are we doing everything we need to do?
It is a bad question to ask to an official.
I know, but I'm asking you honestly. I mean, looking at, these people actually asking about the democratized future of hydrogen. Do you think it's actually the pathway we're heading? Is it going the right way?
I honestly, every time I speak to people that I work on hydrogen, in particular young people, not just youngsters, but even teenagers and kids up to 10, they say, oh, that's the future. That's great. That's wonderful. So because the kids understand that hydrogen is H2, you're connected to O, and then you produce energy. So they understand that. If with 6, 8, 10, 12 years old, you can understand that. I think this is understandable for anyone. And because it's understandable, the EU is funding many projects, including the one that was mentioned about shipping. We are funding, supporting large partnerships on waterborne transport, so it's shipping and inland fluvial vessels, to find zero pollution, zero emissions engines. It would go with batteries, but it would go also with hydrogen, depending on the size of the vessels. And there will be potentially, it was declared recently, an alliance on zero emission aviation, and hydrogen is one of the solutions, along with the batteries, depending on the aircraft's size and destinations that they will be flying. So and also maybe to make a kind of humor, if you want, if the hydrogen is good enough to propel rockets into the sky, into the space, and enable huge development and science progress, so I think it might be good enough to propel European industry. So okay. This is something very, very obvious we are speaking about. Whether it will be the only one, I hope not, because we will have many options, but it is a tremendous opportunity. And maybe to quote that what happens on the ground, and that our recovery and resilience plans that we support, it is about 600 billion that have been mobilized mobilized or are being mobilized into that. Just to quote, yesterday I spoke with a private bank that is supporting one of the projects rolled out by the French government in French Guiana about electricity production and the use of hydrogen, of energy storage, and by use of renewables for production of hydrogen as a power and as a storage solution. So this we have seen everywhere, and it is very reassuring. But maybe last point that I would like to add, it is very clear that if we can see hydrogen as reuniting Europe, it will go also through the network, through the pipelines, because indeed it has been demonstrated that for the size of Europe, the dimension of Europe, the use of pipelines is the most cost effective compared to tankering or compared to grid. So therefore, this is something that is important, that we see that the TSO, so the transmission system operators, are grouping together, and they see the potential of connecting Europe for enabling the transport of green hydrogen. I underline the green hydrogen that will be produced tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, to come from the countries where it's the most cost effective to produce it towards the countries that would most use it and most need it. And maybe last point I want to underline, and it was Jorge who was mentioning about the l'Européanité, so this Europeanhood, to be able to support economic development in other areas of the world, like it was mentioned for Africa. We consider that development of hydrogen projects shall firstly serve the interests of the countries where these will be produced, to support their economic development and respond to their growing economic needs in energy and power, and then to be what would be exceeding would be channeled towards Europe. It's not about Europe cannibalizing the production capacities in hydrogen in Africa, but it will be to build their capacities to enable the economic development, and when it's possible to have export of the exceeding production. This is something we want really to underline, and it's important to understand. But really, we wait for the Fit for 55, and we wait also for a number of other projects that shall be coming out with the low carbon and renewable fuels proposals that are lining up towards the end of this year.
Thank you, Victoria. We're going to be kicked out here, so that's why I have to finish. One very last question with a short answer. We kind of portrayed it as from the future, as this has been like 2020, 2021 has been a pivotal year for what's happening. Do you agree with it? Is the time now of actual change? Is it happening now, or is it still the future?
I think it's important to be a visionary. We need to see in the future. The most important for politicians and technical people is to look very far away from the future. I want to remember that I am French. I have a French author which is very famous. You know Jules Verne? Jules Verne is a visionary. And I've seen a very nice sentence. He's the first one to realize that the hydrogen will be very important for the future. And on the Mysterious Island, which was published in 1875, he wrote this: I believe that water will one day be used as a fuel, that the hydrogen and oxygen in it will provide an inexhaustive source of light and heat of an intensity that coal could not have. Marvelous. It was a very long time ago, but for the future,
and it's
a good
perfect
way.
for me, a nerd, because we started this with Star Trek and we ended with Jules Verne. It's perfect. I want to thank the IED for enabling us to do this wonderful panel. Thank you especially to Johanna Tuzel, who helped us organize it and also was behind the production of this film as well. Thanks a lot. I hope you got something from this panel. It was a great pleasure to talk to all of you, and I guess we could have done it for another 2.5 hours. And There's a lot of issues still there. Thank you all. You have a wonderful day, and goodbye from Brussels.